Why would somebody invest in a property, put tenants in, and then rent elsewhere themselves?
Look, Raj, this is something which a lot of, you'll find a lot of gurus, pundits talk about that, you should always rent a property yourself. You do not buy and live in it. But look, there's nothing wrong in this theory. But at the same time, there are some advantages, some disadvantages. The biggest advantage that if you are renting, if you like flexibility, if you are someone who is not permanent in a place, likes to move around, wants to experience different kind of lifestyle, or sometimes wants to upgrade, or wants to live in a property which is, wants to keep changing. Flexibility is one of the biggest advantages, because what happens is you've bought a property, you've invested in a property which is giving you a steady cash flow. Then it's up to you that how much money you want to spend on rent. I've also seen a lot of people who've bought numerous properties and they're generating a good amount of cash flow, but they themselves, they don't require a big house, or they don't like to live in a big house or something. They would rent a normal, a normal apartment or a normal villa, townhouse, whatever is their need, and they use the balance money for their other lifestyle expenses or any other expenses. So that gives you flexibility in terms of having a healthy cash flow.
Right. So that means, in that sense, then, that if your investment opportunity is really, really big, you have a lot of cash, you can go and invest in a villa, make the kind of cash yields you'd make on a villa. But if you personally don't enjoy living in a villa and only need a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment in a different location, you get the best of both worlds. You get the cash yield from a big property, but you get the low cost benefit of living in a property that's more appropriate for you.
Yes.
So that's a really interesting perspective. Outside flexibility, what else? I mean,
look, also, for a lot of people, it's like, when you're staying in a rented property, you don't take care of the maintenance or, those hassles. For a lot of people, it's like, okay, I'm going to go into this property, stay for 1 year, 2 year. I don't have to take care of things. You also get options today, which are furnished, serviced, you've got a lot of options. So that's one reason why people do choose that. Also,
well, just on that point before you move on, is there a cap in terms of maintenance? Because I'm sure you have to pay something.
If we talk about the Dubai property market, here there's a cap basically when you as a tenant, when you're renting a property, usually there's a cap that you spend not more than anything over 500 dirhams on maintenance. If there's a major maintenance, the landlord takes care of that.
Right.
So it's not under your scope.
Yeah.
Also, one more thing, there are times where you would find that there are certain properties which give you a very high yield. So I've seen some investors buy properties which are yielding them a good return, and renting properties which for their own use, which would probably not generate that much return. So just giving you a very simple example, say for example, someone wanting to put in 5 million dirhams into a property to live in. Now, say if he wants to live in a villa, and that villa would generate him, the rent of that villa is say 250,000 dirhams, just for example. But he has an opportunity where he buys some other property to build his rental portfolio, which is giving him a rent of maybe around 350 to 400,000 dirhams a year. So there are some people who do that, where they buy properties. There could be multiple properties, different properties, which is giving them an yield of around 350 to 400,000 a year, and they're spending 250,000 in rent and still left with another pool of cash to make some other expenses. That way they are enjoying the property they want to live in, and they have some surplus cash also. So, I mean, look, this is something which, is, again, as I said, it's a personal choice, and this gives you flexibility. Tomorrow you want to downgrade to a property which is, on a rent of 150,000, you would have 250,000 surplus cash in your hand.
What's the psychology of somebody, though, that is an investor, is in terms of, have you ever heard any of your clients say, hey, listen, I don't want to live inside my investment portfolio. I want to live outside my investment portfolio. Is that something that investors consider that you work with?
Yeah, look, there are people who prefer that. Okay. Some people, they say, listen, especially if people are in businesses which are more flexible, they don't need to be in one place, they could travel or be in different places. They do prefer sometimes that, okay, I build my rental portfolio, I have a steady cash flow, and then I'll see where I want to live. So, but at the same time, there are a lot of other people who say, listen, you know what, my rental portfolio and everything comes later. First, I want my own house. I don't want to be paying rent. I want to live in my own house. That's, safety and security for me. Mm-hmm. So it also, it is a personal choice.
And you mentioned as well that, like, there's, when you buy and you live in your property, a landlord can't tell you to get out. But in the same sense, if you've got 5 or 6 properties,
yeah,
and they're all investments, and you're renting in another one, if something goes wrong with your property portfolio, you don't necessarily have to get rid of where you're living and where you're renting to subsidize one of your bad investments.
Yeah.
You could just liquidate one of your other property assets or liquidate the bad one without having to uproot where you live.
True.
Have you seen that?
Yeah, I mean, that also happens. There are people who, who've done that they have their portfolio, and time to time, if they feel that, a certain type of property is not really doing well and they want to, sell that and buy another property, upgrade, or, change, that does happen.
Mm. Good. Well, that summarizes the pros of investing in a property, putting tenants in, and then renting elsewhere.